Hello everyone, and welcome to the Violinistics Series at the Organ-ic Violin Square YouTube channel. Hello everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Violinistics Series. My name is Iván, and today we'll be taking a look at the history behind the Violin Sonata in G minor by Claude Debussy. Let's jump right into it. We'll be taking a look at three main aspects of the sonata. First of all, we'll take a look at Debussy's career, then we'll go on to the history of the sonata, and we'll conclude with answering the question why the sonata is important to the violin repertoire. Beginning with Claude Debussy's career, he was born in 1862. He is known as a composer and as a pianist and as the person who ushered in the Impressionist period in music history. Debussy was an extremely proficient pianist, and that is why he applied and was accepted to the Paris Conservatoire. While there, he began composing works with unusual harmonies that broke the music theory rules of back then. Many professors took note of these works and labeled them as strange and unusual. However, while he was still a student, he won the Prix de Rome, which allowed him to go study in Rome, Italy, which he did so for 2 years. While he was there, he met many famous composers and musicians, including Franz Liszt, whose piano playing and composing deeply affected Debussy. Around this time in his life, he worked for Nadezhda von Meck, who was Tchaikovsky's patroness at one point. He also supplied his income by arranging other composers' works, including a four-hand piano arrangement of Saint-Saëns' Introduction Rondo Capriccioso, which originally was scored for violin and orchestra. Debussy finally acquired a reputation with the first performance of his Prelude of an Afternoon of a Faun, which unfortunately I cannot pronounce in French. The first performance of this work deeply affected music critics, and they took note of Debussy's new style. After the success of this work, he also worked on the opera Pelée et Mélisande and the Suite Bergamasque for piano, which includes the lovely Claire de Lune. With Debussy's reputation on the rise, he began working on many new works, including the La Mer trilogy for orchestra, the Nocturnes trilogy for orchestra, and the set of preludes for piano. However, in 1910, Debussy was diagnosed with cancer, and in 1914, World War I began. Debussy began writing more abstract works, which include the suite En Blanc et Noir, and then the set of etudes for piano, and then the sonatas for diverse instruments, as he called them. This last work, the sonatas for diverse instruments, turned out to be Debussy's final completed, or almost completed rather, work. And here's where the Violin Sonata comes in. It was the third in the projected series of diverse instrument sonatas. If you enjoy this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. This will help you stay updated to our latest videos, including live performances, score videos, and the Violinistics series. Now to the history of the Violin Sonata. After the successful premiere of Debussy's string quartet by Eugène Ysaÿe's quartet in 1893, Debussy contemplated on writing a set of nocturnes for violin and orchestra. However, after Ysaÿe refused to premiere the nocturnes due to financial reasons, Debussy rescored them for orchestra. One of the most important influences in Debussy's career was Arthur Hartmann, who was an American-Hungarian violinist and now known as the biographer and friend of Debussy. According to Hartmann's memoirs, Hartmann was introduced to Debussy's music when he attended a 1910 performance of Pelée et Mélisande. Friendship between the two men developed after an exchange of letters, and it rose to a high point in 1914 when they performed a concert together, which included Grieg Sonata No. 2, 2 Hartmann transcriptions of Debussy's music, and Debussy's own arrangement of the minstrels from Preludes for violin and piano. In response to a question from Hartmann why Debussy did not write a sonata for violin as yet, Debussy replied that he disliked the combination of violin and piano and that he thoroughly did not understand the violin. However, after the successful concert, Debussy finally was convinced to write a violin work. However, he did not do it right away. In 1915, Debussy wrote a piece of paper to his publisher Durand, which outlined a new project, which unfortunately would be Debussy's last. These were the 6 sonatas for diverse instruments. The first one was to be for cello and piano, the second for flute, viola, and harp, the third for violin, English horn, and piano, the fourth for oboe, horn, and harpsichord, the fifth for trumpet, clarinet, bassoon, and piano, and the sixth would include all of the above-mentioned instruments, with a double bass addition. For an unknown reason, Debussy removed the English horn from the scoring of the Violin Sonata, and in 1917 he finally began to work on the work. Once it was completed, Debussy worked with the violinist Gaston Boulez on the violin part, and they premiered the work together on 5th of May 1917, right in the heart of World War I, with Boulez on the violin and Debussy on piano. 2 more September performances took place, and the second one, which was on September 14th, 1917, will be Debussy's last public performance. Now on to the importance of Debussy's Violin Sonata in the violin repertoire. The first important aspect of this sonata is its length. It is short, it's about 13 minutes long, which is about half the length of most sonatas of the period. It is extremely compact, and is closely aligned to the length of Baroque sonatas. Secondly, it has a very unusual form. It does not use the traditional sonata allegro form, like most other composers. In fact, there really is only one main theme that occurs throughout the whole sonata. However, the movements are each joined by a series of motifs, which recur in all 3 movements. An example is this motif. It is then repeated in inversion in the second movement, and it is also repeated in inversion and transposition in the third movement. The third very interesting aspect of the sonata is its instrumentation. Debussy explicitly stated that this sonata was to be for violin and piano, unlike the earlier labels of piano and violin. After the Baroque era ended, the piano became a very important instrument. Beginning with composers like Mozart and Beethoven, they labeled their sonatas as being for piano with violin accompaniment. However, there is an exception with Beethoven's Kreutzer Sonata, in which both instruments are equally scored. Even though violin gained prominence throughout the Romantic period, composers still stated that their sonatas were to be for piano and violin, such as the sonatas by Franck, Grieg, Brahms, and many more. However, as stated before, Debussy looked to Baroque models for this sonata, and therefore, in Baroque music, violin usually held a higher place than the accompanying instrument. While I'm not stating that in this sonata the piano is an accompanying instrument, Debussy emphasizes that the violin has an important part in the sonata, unlike previous ones by Romantic composers. Thank you everyone for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've learned a lot about this sonata and Claude Debussy. Please stay tuned for the next Violinistics Series video.